call.
Commissioner Massili,
Here.
Commissioner Akers,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Harris, present.
Here.
All right. Commissioner Rosick, present, and Planner Schrader.
Present.
Okay, approval of the agenda.
Oh, I probably should grab a copy. To approve the agenda dated November 3rd, 2015 for the planning commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approval of the minutes for October 6th, 2015. Motion would be in order for approval.
I make a motion we approve the minutes for October 6th planning commission meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing, there is none. Anyone receive any communications or correspondence? Last month, I shared with you a correspondence that we received from a business owner who wanted to be on the agenda tonight, and he's not here. So,
Have we heard from him?
have not.
Okay.
Community dinner set for the 20th, for all those that want to participate in that, go.
You have the details?
Meeting
Um,
tomorrow, 6 o'clock here.
I have a flyer.
So there's a meeting tomorrow night regarding the dinner for anybody who'd like to be involved
Oh.
at 6 o'clock tomorrow night here at the office.
Basically, it's at high school, you can volunteer, it's canned food
6
for
to 8.
admission, all the proceeds go to the food pantry. I will
Raffles.
be passing out food to my homes.
Awesome. That's at 6 o'clock?
6 till 8.
Okay.
On the 20th, and then the meeting about the planning of it and development of it, who's helping, it's tomorrow night.
Active planners. Okay, old business, following up on discussion of the recreation plan. The reason why I asked that this be on the agenda is because after last month's meeting, we attended the council meeting, and our plan was presented for their review. And we also made it publicly announced that the document was also already on 30-day review. We also had a requirement, we had to request a public hearing on the document, and that is scheduled for the next meeting of the council next Tuesday. So if it's at 6 o'clock, so if you can fit it into your schedules, it would be nice to have the entire planning commission there in support of the document. The other thing is that within that, one thing I would hate to happen is for us to go through all this work and come up with a recreational plan, and then it drops. Within that document, you all recall that there is a committee, I think, of 7 people. And one of the things I would like to do at the next council meeting, after the public hearing, after their vote, and there was no negative reaction at all. It was a positive reception. So I don't anticipate a problem. So after the document has been approved after the public hearing, I would like to request that the president get busy on starting to get that committee together. I checked with the clerk to see if it needed to be posted, and if posting it in the office was enough, did it need to be in the paper? She didn't know.
He
And
was going to, I believe, bring to council, develop an ordinance to set in place the stipulations for positions, when they would start, when they would end, and that sort of stuff. So this person will come from council, this person will come from planning.
it's in the document.
Right, I think he wanted to set it in ordinance,
Okay.
and I think he's been in touch with the attorneys on it.
So you're saying he's already doing, I'm gonna say it anyway.
Yeah.
Just so that it is said, from this body, that after all the time we put in it, you don't want it to die. Because, as we said last week, that committee is the workforce behind that document. It's nothing without it. That committee would be on you, keeping you busy, moving us forward. Any other discussions or concerns about the whole Parks and Rec concept, process? Everything is moving on, unless somebody has any questions or concerns.
The only question that I have, and I will maybe pose it to Brett, we're looking for those plaques for the old, did anybody ever come up
Yeah,
with the plaques?
did you get the picture?
No, I did not.
Okay, we didn't have the old plaques, we ordered a plaque, we put it up and took pictures, and I thought, surely you did with it.
No, I didn't receive.
I'll make sure you
it
get it tomorrow.
No
It's
problem.
out, it's taken care of.
Okay, because we'll put that in the report, we need to report back
Okay.
to the state on the past grants that we've received.
Oh,
There have been past grants for Parks and Recreation. Okay, perfect.
all righty. Going on to new business.
Before we move, did you need the final paperwork back?
I will need that stuff, do you need those two documents signed by Chris,
Right.
village president?
I
But
think we did that, okay.
we can get those back, they just need to be in the document prior to
When you
submitting it to the
submit it.
DOT.
Okay, I'll make sure you get it.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff, so the expectation next week is what? And then what do we do next?
I think that the
Or are we on track?
The expectation next week is to hold a public hearing, hear comment from the public, and they'll close out our 30-day period, will be closing the Wednesday, or the meeting's
This
Wednesday.
week.
Yeah, the meeting's closing out this Wednesday,
And the meeting is?
and the meeting will be that, so that follows the guidelines, the DNR. After speaking to them on the phone, though, they advised us to hold off on ratifying it till December. Reason being is if we do it any earlier than that, they'll consider that effective in 2015, and we basically lose a year on the plan, so. But they did encourage us, once we did ratify it and approve it, to get it into them early. So we'll try to submit it in January.
Okay.
So if there are any questions or concerns they have, we can even address them as well. But I think we're on track to putting this one, getting it done.
Okay, so we're saying that the ratification by council then should not be done
Till the December meeting.
until December meeting. Okay, so,
Should we do it December or January? After I talked to you, I thought about, should we do it January?
No,
meeting?
it's whatever you guys prefer. The state said they were fine with doing it in December.
I mean, just because it'd be signed off on and it'd still be 2015.
Yeah, they said that was okay. They just didn't want it prior months prior to that.
okay, there's no other discussion on that? New business. Last month, for your review, just to read it and decipher what you could out of it, I gave everybody a copy of the document that I had received called the Village of New Haven Proposed DDA Plan. Let me ask first, did you have time to take a look at what this is? And what the possibilities are? Yeah, what do you think?
Depends on who owns what property and where we're talking about. I mean, it might be hard pill to swallow for some people.
Why?
I mean, some people aren't gonna wanna conform. You got most of Main Street's residential now, isn't it?
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't realize was that this is a proposal for a specific, this is actually, it's almost like a college paper. It's like a research paper on a suggested project that is fictitious, okay? Has nothing nothing to do with what we would do. We would come up with our own project, our own focus. And what it is, though, it's a process that could be put in place that is long-term, it's nothing, really short-term, but a designated area would be defined as the activity area. Don't pay attention to what was done there because there's nothing on Main Street,
Well, it makes more sense now that you said it was more of a project,
Yes,
kind
yeah,
of hypothetical,
So-
because
so
the
that-
details aren't really there.
exactly. Nothing is there, but we have to design it based upon what we have and what we plan. And we set a vision when we did the master plan. And so within the master plan are ideas that could be used instead of this community building that they're talking about in the document. The whole thing needs to be rewritten and designed to reflect where we are and where we want to go, with the leadership and the assistance of community members, business owners. And as a matter of fact, this was brought to me by, and supported by 3 or 4 business owners. And a couple of them are here tonight. Chuck, I know you don't want to talk, but I gotta have you talk, just to kind of explain from a business owner's perspective why this is important, or why you're interested in helping the planning commission get an understanding so we can make a recommendation.
Before we get into that, because it's boring to me, but because I've been through it too many times, but I've already given the planner, the steps, the steps and things that has already been done, back in '06, and I think that reflected that. The first part of this has already been done, as far as being adopted and all those type of things, and I didn't have I meant to get, I didn't know if we was going out deep, we were gonna get into this, but I did forward this to the planner, and what I did find so far that was done in '06.
And was there a statute of limitation?
No statute of
I think it's
limitations,
statute of
that's
limitations.
that's in the enabling legislation now.
Okay.
But I think at this point, it's at the level of the council, or whatever the council wants to do with it. It's my interpretation.
Okay, and the reason why it is of interest to me is because of the fact that it is 2006 and it's dying. It's laying there and is being covered by dust and dirt. And if we can pick it up wherever it is and make a recommendation, and the thing probably has to be updated now. What did you?
It would definitely need to be updated.
Right, because it's no good if it's,
What-
the information is irrelevant.
What appears from what Brett had given me and what I've been able to find in the ordinance is in 2006, you did in fact establish a downtown development authority by ordinance that basically spells out the powers of the authority, how the board of directors of that authority would be selected, what their powers are, the option of putting together a DDA plan for how those monies would be captured through the DDA, how they could be expended. I don't have any detail on that. What it looks like happened, it looks like a TIF authority and a tax increment financing plan and a downtown development authority was established by ordinance in March of 2006. At that time, they did approve a DDA boundary, which I believe is the map that is in the proposed, in the document that you distributed last time.
Yeah.
Which would be all of the industrial area, commercial up Gratiot, going into the downtown area. Those were adopted at that time.
But at that
They
time, there
can
were
be-
buildings on the street.
Right, and they could be, that can be amended. Private residences can be included in DDAs. It all depends upon really depends upon the mechanisms that the DDA wants to use in terms of capture. There's different ways of DDA. With the DDA being an authority, the DDA has the power to bond projects. The DDA has the power to, if the village council chooses, they can level a millage against, a tax millage up to 2 mills against any properties that are in the DDA. Don't know that many communities who do that. And then they also have the opportunity for tax increment financing, where they take a look at the base year, and then any new development that comes beyond that, where the value of those properties comes out, that additional tax value over the base year, as opposed to it going into the village, going to the county, or going to the various different taxing jurisdictions, can go into the DDA fund. Generally, those funds then are expended on a plan that's approved by the community, a work plan that will spell out these are the things we want to do. If you look at some of our neighboring communities, like the city of Richmond, they have a large TIFA district which functions as their DDA, but they have, through that, they maintain a facade program. They've done infrastructure developments along Main Street. They've included the Eden Park as part of their DDA or the TIFA district, and over the 30 or 40 years that has been functioning, 30 years that it's been functioning, they've been able to affect a large amount of reinvestment in the community through that. I think the question.
This is good news. I mean, my thing, because the issue is nothing is being done. The issue is we develop a master plan with a vision. We're trying to get a Parks and Rec in position so that we are in position to go for grants. And then we, and as a matter of fact, it wasn't the first master plan either, but it was stalemated. And one thing New Haven doesn't need is any more stalemating. And that if we're going to sit here once a month, we may as well at least be a catalyst to something. So if it's not dead, I mean, we can pick it up where it is. And one of the first things, the district has to be redefined.
I would agree, because I would think there is no statute of limitations, and I'll defer to John. This is John Casey.
Hi, John.
He's new on our staff within the last month. John hails from McKenna Associates, so he's had some time in the private sector. He's had an experience with a number of communities who have implemented DDAs or also worked to establish them. So brought him along to hear the discussion as well, because if we do move forward, he'll be an integral part of it.
Right, because the request to council was only going to be to allow us to look at it and update it and bring it back to them. But it's about doing something. It wasn't as difficult of a read. I was prepared to be bored, but it wasn't as difficult of a read, I guess, compared to my doctoral reading and anything.
From the master plan.
So it just seems to me that, we're getting things updated and in motion. And if this thing is in place, and I apologize for not getting back to you when you had let us know about finding that ordinance.
The only limitation that I see in the ordinance because I looked through the enabling legislation again today, at the state level, they said that they state in the enabling legislation that within, I believe it was within 60 or 90 days of establishing the district, then the assessor, who would be Lennox Township assessor since we're a village, would need to go and prepare a baseline SEV valuation for all of the properties that are in the district, and that would set the baseline. I don't know if that was done. So that's the only thing we really need to check with the state. If the baseline wasn't established, is it actually in effect, or do we need to go back and reestablish the boundary?
Take my word, it wasn't done.
You said it was not done?
So if that was not done, we may need to check with the state tax, check the state treasury, which we can do next couple days, and find out if we need to reenact the establishment of the boundary. Because that boundary, it's a very prescribed method of doing that. It's a series of public hearings, contacting the community, contacting all of the residents and business owners that are within the proposed district. Yeah, and have them have the opportunity to give their public input on that as well. And there's some very, there's a whole prescribed procedures of notification that need to be done for that to have it be done properly. So, being that we're all 10 years out, obviously the taxage, everything's, things have changed. The environment in this community's changed a lot, and the players have changed. So, my recommendation would probably be we may need to relook at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the request was. But again, this is not our regular jurisdiction, just like the Parks and Rec was not. I don't think the master plan was either. But we went to the council and they gave us.
It would be at their direction to empower us to do that study for them and to start that process.
Well, we're further ahead than that.
Yeah, the legal structure is set in place right now for it. It looks like we would probably need to reopen the public hearings. It probably to have everybody in the community on board to let them know, what this is about. So there'll be some education that would need to take place there. And then once that district were reestablished and the assessments are done, then there is the establishment of a DDA board, which would be village council would be doing the appointing of that board.
Exactly. Okay, gotcha. Chuck, George, got something to add in lieu of where we are?
I just want to know why it's taking so long.
I just have a couple comments. I followed this DDA thing right from the beginning, and and I believe it properly managed. It does have the ability to be an asset.
George, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I was just saying that since this first came on the scene back in prior to the adoption of the ordinance, it has, in my view, it's something that it has its place. But these kinds of things, it always comes down to the people that are involved in implementing and making it work. And it always seemed to me to be an absence of real commitment to pursue that. And I think it's basically because people, different sides of the thing, it became politically distracting. And the only thing I would have to say, if the council chooses to pick it up again and go forward with it, the only real criticism that I had going way back, and Brett will probably remember, is that the map that was drawn really didn't make a lot of sense. It was very hodgepodge, and in order to meet a lot of the criteria of who has to staff the commission, the DDA board of commissioners, or however that is, you have to have it big enough because it's very precise as to who those people are and where they have to be drawn from. If you restrict that area down to limited, which I consider is limited, you have you limit a lot of people that could be beneficial to it, which maybe would or would not affect geographically the value of the area, but you want to get it big enough so you can staff it, number one. And to me, when I looked at that old map, you'd have a tough time maybe staffing it, at least with the kind of people that you want to staff it with, because you got to remember, if you're going to do this, you want to give it the best effort that you have to get success in the end. And that's the only comment that I had when I looked at that map. It seemed to be way too restrictive in terms of being able to staff it the way it needs to be staffed. Because it's gotta be big enough, so you got enough people in there that can, you know, do what needs to be done. Other than that, good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Drake.
You know, we've had our business here for about 10 years now. And I remember the very first year when I asked the council to consider having a DDA. And, you know, I've got a little experience of pushing a string uphill in New Haven with the fountain, okay? And a little bit of perseverance, a little bit of strong will, and we got a fountain. Now, hopefully, the same string will move uphill to have a DDA. The council voted on passing for that DDA. Virtually every community in our district has a DDA. It has its positives and it has its negatives. But without an instrument like that, and the vision and the leadership to push something forward, if we do nothing, we will have just what we have. If it's just one little thing that can accomplish, it's more than what we have. And that's just a logical alternative to me, to move forward, one step at a time, okay? Yes, it has its downsides, it has its positives, but with the right leadership and a vision, we can make it happen. It's all up to us.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where would you see New Haven putting a DDA?
What would, say it again now?
Just if you had the knowledge to put the boundaries out there, where would you say the boundaries of a DDA would be?
I'm not a surveyor. And
No, just right off the top of your head.
just off the top of my head, one, I think I would try to follow the natural boundaries, the streams and so forth, so I would not have to displace or move a lot of the residents or bring that into question. I would include, quote unquote, the downtown area in that boundary, okay? That's number one. Number two, there is enough, looking just at that, there's enough property in there. Sure that some of that property is owned by others, okay? But I would include those people on the DDA, okay? So that those people would have the decision powers. Pushing a string up from the bottom, Brett, is very difficult. Coming down from the top with the leaders involved in it. Now, yes.
You answered my question. My question is just where the boundary would you do? You mentioned the other communities. Other communities have a downtown. The Village of New Haven doesn't have a downtown. But that was only I was just asking for the boundaries.
No.
There's not a store down there, there's not a restaurant down there, there's nothing in our downtown.
I beg your pardon, our flower shop is downtown.
Okay. I said restaurant or store, but yeah, there is a flower shop down
Okay,
there.
and there's a gas station, there's a vacancy over there, there's a business across the street from it, okay? And if you want to develop it, you can. Now, if you look at the historical records of New Haven, that area is declared downtown, okay? That area is declared in the historical records as downtown New Haven. So to say there's no...
I just asked you what was the boundary. I didn't ask for an argument or anything. I just asked for where would you look at the boundaries of it being? I said we don't have a downtown.
We have a downtown.
Okay, in your historical site, you have a downtown, but there's not a downtown, as in what you would see in Richmond or New Baltimore or Mount Clemens, where these downtown developments actually are. Okay, I'm done.
You're done.
I am, yeah.
Okay. My last comment is, they started from someplace.
Well,
John, right?
Yes.
Greg, if you don't mind, maybe you could, I don't know how much you've looked at New Haven, and how much you've seen. I mean, obviously, there's been an influx of building on Gratiot there at 27 and down Gratiot. So we do have Rose Cellar downtown, we have a gas station, it's on the old downtown area. But what would, in your professional opinion, what we want to do to start going as far as to, I mean, you got to build a downtown somewhere, but we don't have a downtown necessarily. In the effects of, like Brett was saying, a Richmond or New Baltimore, Rochester, whatever. So, I mean, these are places where they have very viable and successful downtown development type authorities, But, I mean, Richmond is one of the longest downtowns in stinking America. It's just good. It just continues to go. But, I mean, for us, I mean, it's essentially one small little area. So how would we go from there?
could I add on to that
Yeah.
as well? Is it, as you're speaking, is it possible to create a DDA and expand its boundaries as we go forward? Like, is
No.
it, okay, I guess, what I'm saying is, okay, I've, it's not gonna be popular, and I apologize in advance, because I've always said it before, is we need to work on Gratiot. I mean, if we're gonna work on anything, we need to give people a picturesque reason to turn left or right, depending on which direction they're coming from. If Gratiot looks like Gratiot looks like, people aren't gonna wanna venture to see what else we have, because they'll see exactly what we have on Gratiot, which is much. So I guess my point is what can we do to sort of boost Gratiot, its appearances? We've talked about facades and stuff, helping these businesses look a little better, maybe not kick them out, but what is there out there that we can clean them off?
would do.
Sure.
Yeah, what is there we can do to
That's in
clean
there.
these businesses up from a surface level, so that, can we do some sort of grants or whatnot, that if they agree to, say, pave or
Well,
something,
isn't that what the
we
taxing
match
situation,
and stuff
the
like
DDA
that.
they borrow against?
something there for Gratiot. Sorry.
Yeah, within a DDA, there's a host of tools that are at their disposal. So there's bonding authority, so you can attach it to a specific revenue stream, whether it's within like a tax increment, which is above whatever the base value would be. Like, so every year that passes by, as property increases in value, whatever is above that baseline is what you capture. You can reinvest that. There's like a whole list of stuff within the act on what you can invest that in, whether it's streetscape materials, so trees, benches, waste receptacles. You can even create grants that are up to, I believe, $7,500 for facade improvements. For the bonding issues, you can then bond and actually develop sites, purchase sites, and get involved in publishing RFPs for site redevelopment. There's a whole host of tools that are at your disposal with the DDA. As for how to develop a downtown or kind of reclaim what was historically an existing downtown, that is, and also touch on the boundary issue, that has a lot to do with your zoning. So if you zone for whatever you're desiring for that specific corridor, you want to make sure that you're zoning for something that will allow for that type of development within that corridor. Now that boundary that you have set up, that can allow you to focus your revenue into those sites that you're trying to develop. Now, if you want to establish your boundary, and typically when you establish a boundary, you want to make sure that it's not too specific, so then you can capture the spin-off effects of of growth. So you can include a little bit of the residential area within the parameters of the act. And then if you ever wanted to change those, then you need to go through a whole set of public hearings and have a formal amendment to that. But once you establish it, you can't change it without going through the formal process.
Go ahead, Doc.
I have a question. You know, and I guess Brett's point brings it to mind. You know, I've read the enabling legislation a few times. I mean, it's been a long time since I read it, and so here's my question. We keep talking about downtown, downtown, downtown. Must a DDA and what it's set out to try to achieve, as described in the enabling legislation, to improve the values of properties in the area, must it be concentrated on a downtown or formerly downtown, or can that be applied to any area that's in a depressed state, downtown or not?
It typically has to be, from what I understand, concentrated on your primary commercial and business area within your city.
Well, which Brett's point is right, we don't have one, it's on Gratiot now.
And then whatever corridor you identify as your major thoroughfare. And then within the jurisdiction that you design, wherever your boundaries are located, you can use those funds anywhere within that boundary to reinvest or develop or whatever improvements you want to site, whether you can even hire a landscaping company to come in and mow your grass. That's within the authority. Like, that's all different things you can use your funds for. As long as it's within the district, you have the authority to do that with the DDA.
So technically, you can grow, say if you still say, well, this used to be the downtown area and we'd like to concentrate on that, but it can be as big as it needs as long as it includes that.
It allows for growth, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because everything that is today does not necessarily mean it's that way tomorrow. That's what's despairing about.
If I can add, my experience in looking at communities that have been successful have, when they've defined that boundary, they've made that boundary broad. If you look at the map, the proposed map that was out there, it was taking into account all of the industrial area south of the town. It was taking into account the foundry, and also all the way along the corridor of Gratiot, and also that large piece of triangular commercial property that's still sitting out there between Gratiot and New Haven Road, where we would anticipate larger development to come into play. But to answer your question about do you need to have a traditional downtown, I can point to Shelby Township. Shelby Township's in the process of trying to establish what is a center of their community. And they've established their DDA along Van Dyke corridor. And I think is it 27 or I forget which.
It goes up to 26 Mile.
Yeah, so they've done a DDA for all those businesses along Van Dyke. And their plan, in their master plan, is to try to create a community center around, I think it's at 24, 25 mile.
Yeah.
So as a stimulus for trying to accomplish something, if you look to the master plan, what we just passed, we've talked about the traditional downtown area here of New Haven, of trying to increase the density, encouraging more businesses in that area, so we can invest money there. But if you cast your net broad enough where we're capturing taxes from those other businesses out on Gratiot, those funds could also be put into a gateway project, signage along Gratiot, wayfinding, to point yourself downtown. But all of the money does not necessarily have to be right down here at the railroad tracks in New Haven. It can be done within the district. And looking at the community in terms of where future potential development is going to come, that's going to be a larger investment. It is going to be out on Gratiot most likely, because then we do have properties out there that are available that are still undeveloped.
Yeah. I mean, and the benefit with the DEA is the fact that because it is a defined jurisdiction that's a more concentrated area, like anything else, if you want to try to boil the ocean, you're more effective when you are concentrating on a specific area. So whether it's your plan or or your strategic allocation of funds and what you're gonna try to improve, it always makes sense to have that plan within the DDA plan to make sure that you focus on improvement.
And I think the other thing that's important to realize is that once you cast the mechanism for capturing that tax, the DDA board and that, they'll be charged with putting together a plan, which will then be presented to the council will vote on that. And that plan can include a plan for streetscaping or a future plan for a facade program. But there's going to be a period of a number of years where you're just going to be kind of in a mode where you're collecting taxes to have enough capital to be able to actually institute some projects. The last thing I would advise, a beginning DDA to do is go out and try to bond something large, because you need to know you're going to have to be responsible for those bonds. But the TIF capture portion of it is really what most people are exercising. So it's giving them that gradual income, and as values come up, or as new investment happens, or if Tractor Supply expands, all that additional development all becomes taxable that can be accrued to the TIF. And that money can start to then accumulate to something significant where you can then do some programming with it.
Yeah, and like anything else, like time is critical with it. So with the adoption of a master plan and rec plan, and you have these ideas kind of rolling and you have some type of energy, you want to get in there and establish it before development starts to happen. So that any type of benefit that you get from those plans, you can capture and make sure you get that type of elevation above the baseline.
And the other thing I would add to that is as property taxes and values came down so low with the recession, we're at a rebound point. So most communities, like Shelby Township's in the process of resetting their baseline. They're talking to the state. They want to go out and reset their boundaries and then reset that SEV. And we're kind of, we're posed here in a position where if we were to set one up now, you're going to see revenues, because you're going to have the natural rebound coming back up, and you'll be capturing that, and then whatever other development.
See, that's where I have a problem at this time with doing a DDA, because of the tax and because of how the economy and how we went down. That we're not back yet to where we were, where just say the dollars that we were getting in meals, we're not back to, just for example, where the fire department was getting 100, 110 a year for one meal. We still probably like at 80,000. So we need to be where our operating budget is. And then, because during the DDA, remember that tax only comes off of the additional tax that you actually bring in.
And Brett raises a good point there, because there is a balance between the community, what the community's taking in revenues and expecting, and then, it needs to be balanced to what was be skimmed off from the DDA. And for it to be a successful program, the DDA and the council have to be in lockstep with each other. Because otherwise you'll end up with communities, I won't name any names tonight, but you have communities where DDAs are holding a purse that they've had for many, many years, and the community's saying, we need those revenues, and they're asking for those back, and you end up with contention between the DDA board and the village council. You don't want to establish that type of thing. So if the time isn't right that way, that would be a discussion for council to decide. But when do taxes come back up to where you guys are back in the black, feeling comfortable, they can skim off the top of that?
Mr.
Well,
Gray?
we were building like Macomb Township was, then we'd be in good shape.
I have a question. This is a question of a technical nature. These just come to mind. In the example that you used and Brett responded to, in what you call increment tax financing, any increases, say for example, every year the Headley allows you to go up a certain amount because of the cost of living, however they figure that out. Oh, and that increase in a DDA does that accrue to the DDA, or does that accrue back to the village?
That would accrue to the DDA.
So any increase would accrue, any increase over the baseline?
The natural increase over the baseline, and then any additional capital investment that would bring up a property's value, anything would be captured.
Well, I think he has a legitimate concern, because that's really not fair. It should only be increases that's attributable to some action of the DDA. If the DDA does something that causes it to go up, now that's a legitimate thing that should accrue back to the DDA, but just to sit there and wait for the economy or the cost of living to go up and we reap the benefits and nothing has changed. You gotta do some work to get some money, I guess that's what I'm saying. And I agree with Brett on that point. You see what I'm saying?
I mean, I think the only issue with the having it directly attributed to DDA action is depending on how you define that, then you have a difficult measurement to have to take place where, well, what was the true impact of the streetscape? These are things that aren't necessarily easy to understand or enumerate in most cases. And I think also, then do you make it site specific? So if that specific site that you invest in, it goes up in 10 grand, like do you then capture that only site, or do you then go throughout the entire DDA? So that's why I think in a lot of cases, it's just kind of like this general kind of definition, because then it makes it less sticky, and I think fair for every jurisdiction that you have that establishes a DDA.
Does the DDA have an opportunity to differentiate from what they earn versus what the givings are under the rules of,
It's not required in the legislation doesn't ask for it to be enumerated that way. They're just saying any value over the baseline. So, for any community, I think you'd want to have your fiscal house in order before you establish a DDA, because you definitely want to be able to take care of business first. But then realize that the DDA is not the entire community, so there'll be other incremental increases that the community would receive from properties that are not there. So, defining those boundaries becomes important that way.
Yeah, because it would seem to me that, the same cost of living increases that would cause my taxes to rise each year, there's a similar cost that the village has to all of the other services that it has to perform. It's gonna cost more too. So basically, they're gonna be losing out continuously, there's something wrong with that.
Now, I could say for some communities, try to answer that. Some communities in their plan, in their DDA plan or their TIFA plan, because there's some other mechanisms that you can put together to kind of accomplish the same thing. They do have stipulations in their plan that a certain amount will then accrue back to the local unit, go back to the general fund for paying for certain elements. So I know Richmond does, they pay back for certain policing and certain things that happen when they do their community events. So there is money going back into the general revenue stream that way. And that would be something that can be established when you craft the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I asked, is that some power within the DDA itself would allow them to, pay back.
It needs to be stipulated in the long-range DDA plan, because if you spell that out, then everyone's on the same page in agreement that at the end of the fiscal year, the village gets so much, the DDA keeps so much. And we see that in a lot of communities, but it's really on a case-by-case basis of what their financial situation is and where they need additional assistance.
Anything else to add?
No, I mean, I think it's a great idea to kind of look at and entertain. I think looking at the plan, we should kind kind of check it out. And I think it's also good to kind of think of it as, it's not necessarily something that's set in stone for the entire eternity of New Haven. It has a sunset to the program. And it's a good tool to help revitalize something or redevelop a specific area that you're trying to target. So even if it's going to be benefiting the DDA initially for that capture, ultimately the entire community will benefit once the success of that DDA is truly established and seen over the course of its existence.
Let me ask you another question. Other than the DDA, have you looked at our downtown, I mean, what we call downtown?
I looked at it on Google Maps, so I'm brand new, so I'm going to have to chart through it pretty soon.
Well, when you do look at it.
Yes.
What would be, I mean, if you could come up with what else, what would other program or something that would be out there that developing or would, from the planning aspect of developing the downtown?
So other than a DDA?
Yeah.
I mean, like Jeff was saying, like the TIFAs, like those are other things that are not necessarily a DDA, but work in a similar fashion. So you can establish like your own boundary for a tactical plan. And then it works similar to a DDA, but you don't have the same type of structure necessarily as a.
But I think villages are not allowed to create TIFAs in Michigan. Yeah, it's townships and villages aren't, cities can. It becomes a similar thing. But give you an example, if the focus was just on Gratiot, and say we just want to improve Gratiot corridor, then you have a corridor improvement authority that you can do as well. Functions in a very similar way, but it ends up being a linear district that would take into consideration the investment of those properties fronting Gratiot. It would be a board of all the people who would have the interest on Gratiot, and the monies would be spent there. It's a smaller way of doing it. DDA gives you a broader, lets you cast a broader net to capture more. You can capture your industrial dollars, you can capture other improvements that way.
And you also have like very competitive programs, like grant programs and stuff you can apply for placemaking or transportation improvement, or there's other grants that are available, but there's community development block grants, like different things you can get. There are also funds, but those are much more competitive. And now you're competing with multiple communities to write the grants and get those allocations of funds.
Yeah, community development is a real joke now.
Yeah.
I mean, for the funds that you get for them.
What,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Good.
Dan?
Good.
What steps need to be taken for the corridor improvement authority? Where are we to that? Like, is that something that we can practically look at and?
We would have, there's different enabling legislation on that. I have not been involved, I've not been involved in establishing one, but we could definitely take a look at it. I know that the mechanisms are very similar. I just don't know what the length, time, if it has a certain sunset date. We'd have to look into that and give you some more, do some research on that one.
Is that something,
The Gratiot corridors.
is that something other people would like to see if?
I mean, that potentially could be another way of going, but then again, you would be limited to expending those dollars within that corridor, so they would not necessarily be available for
Well, then
downtown.
once we can always move to other, down the line,
Mhm.
focus on one, and doesn't exclude us from eventually doing a DDA.
No, that wouldn't.
Right, so we would have that and we'd focus there, DDA down the road.
And if we looked at a DDA down the road, what is wrong with updating what we have now so that when we determine that we are ready, you're not recovering from 2006? You are updating from.
I think the fact that you have the ordinance in place, you have the legal mechanics in place right now. I believe what we would need to do to kickstart it would be to hold the public. This is my assumption. We wouldn't want to check with the state treasurer. I think we would need to rehold some public hearings, re-educate the community, re-educate the business owners and the people who would be falling within that district, re-examine those district boundaries, see that these still make sense, that we want to capture within this area. And then after you have the public hearing and that, then you would need to have the assessment done by the assessor to establish that baseline.
Okay. I tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to table this and move it to next month's agenda. And we will be working with whom? in
We,
all-
well, collectively, we'll work
Okay.
together. We can, we can take a look at the corridor
Yeah,
improvement
if you could
authority
come back
legislation,
with that.
bring information back on that. But John, what I would add to you, ask you is that in the communities that you've worked with in the past, people, a lot of people will come and do a baseline assessment and kind of get an idea. I mean, really, the person that needs to be involved in this whole thing is the Lennox Township assessor, because she can do a quick back of the envelope SEV establishment and then actually give some predictions as to, okay, over the last 5 years, this is how much things have gone. You could actually put some dollars on what potentially could be collected and what the rate of growth is. We have no idea, just sitting here today. You really want to look at a study like that before you go.
But I just want to say that just before you do anything, we probably need to establish the area first.
Absolutely.
Because I can tell you this map that's in the map this year, it's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen. I mean, I think even at that point, I think the guy just came in and said, okay, then it's gonna be this area.
Yeah.
And never looked at the area. It says, just looked at the map and says, okay, we'll do this area. But we need to really nail down the area that we actually want to do if we were gonna do a DEA.
And then also deciding, does it make fiscal sense for the community?
Right.
You know, that's the most important question that needs to be answered first. Can we afford to skim off the top? Or do we need everything? Or do we need everything we have to operate right now?
Get money up to the top before we start skimming.
We gotta get something that got some tax to it first. And actually, this gentleman, that wrote this,
Thank you, John.
Was he involved in
He was involved, he came to our meeting and said, he sat in, and actually, he wrote the book.
That's where we pull the resource
Can I get a
from.
business card?
I don't have them yet.
Oh,
I have you agree.
okay.
Yeah.
What's your last name?
CULCASI.
C-U-M, uh-oh, you
Hold
started
on.
spelling.
Okay, C-U-L.
CASI. That's Kulkazi.
Okay, thank you.
H-I-J-K.
You're right.
Title,
Okay, so
what's
it's
your
recommended,
title?
the recommendation,
I am the associate fire.
I'm gonna table this, and then
Thank you.
if you could, next month, just bring back, a priority list. We need a worksheet. There's one thing I don't want to happen is for this thing to lay back down and die. Some steps of priorities.
Okay.
We don't have to vote on that, do we? Okay.
We didn't do anything, so just talked a lot.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, John. You're welcome. And Chuck and George for your participation. George Drake, Mr. Drake's lot split. I put the paperwork at everybody's desk. Jeff?
Mr. Drake's before us for a lot split on his property at 58660 Victoria Street. Per my letter to the building department, state I've reviewed the site plan submitted for this split. The only thing that we're finding is the proposal requires a variance. The side yard setback off the common driveway, which is on the north side of the lot of parcel number 2, is only 37 feet from the outbuilding to that common driveway. The zoning ordinance requires 50 feet. So in this case, a variance would be required. I believe that's why Mr. Drake is before us today, because it's this body that can recommend that variance. And then once that variance is granted, it's up to city council then to approve the lot split.
Do you have any issues with that variance?
I have no objection, no, I have no objections as the planner.
Mr. Drake?
Thank you for giving this opportunity. I would like to formally request the variance on the parent parcel that's that's off the driveway, and the separation to the building to the north is 35 feet, and I would like to request that the lot split be approved with, and that variance be granted. That building is an outbuilding, it's not a permanent structure. There it is an outbuilding, and going back to the point when the original building was built, I believe the standards were less at the time, which would have allowed, which that would have been proper at the time that those buildings were built. But since then, the ordinance has changed, and I'm before you requesting that that lot split be allowed to go forward with that variance. Thank you. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? And, to the planner, your recommendation?
My recommendation would be to approve the variance.
Gonna approve the variance that's 37 feet. He said 35.
Yeah. It's 37 on the.
For,
Motion would be in order?
that was the motion.
That wasn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
Oh, I didn't hear this, okay. So-
He made a motion to approve the variance at
Okay,
37 feet.
I heard it, I thought he was doing a point of information,
Correct.
correcting the 2 feet.
Both.
I'm
So
sorry.
motion has been made by Mr. Harris
Amend my
to
request.
approve.
I second it.
Motion is made by Mr. Harris to recommend the approval of the variance, seconded by Commissioner Messina. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
I do-
So
can I
we
ask-
probably need to, this recommendation has to go to the council
Yes.
for lot split.
Yeah.
So you'll handle that, liaison?
Well, do we have to make a motion? Should that be a motion? Or,
Well,
How do you want to-
as part of
I
the,
don't know, part of the,
as part of the application, it's automatically gonna go there.
Right.
I think we just need to send along just the resolution on what we just did on
Oh, we need
the
a
variance. But you don't have to do, we don't approve the lot split, we just approve the variance.
right.
Can I ask a question just on this?
Council approved the lot split, we approved the variance.
Correct.
Right.
So,
So what do
just,
we?
Okay, so.
just a quick question, George. So, okay, so,
So what,
not that it matters, but I'm just curious. So your business then, that's like industrial, your house is gonna stay like industrial? How's that
We
gonna
don't
work?
have a problem, I wrote this up for Laura.
Or is your house gonna go residential?
No, it's all still,
Like industrial?
the entire parcel is residential.
Oh,
Just
okay, I thought
being
you were like
split.
industrial for some reason.
No, it's not industrial.
Yeah, that's what,
Light
The
that's what I
entire
was wondering.
parcel is light industrial, and it's just dividing that parcel.
Okay.
The one building is.
I just wasn't sure if your house, if you wanted that to be residential now,
No,
it's
it's,
split.
no, it's still light industrial.
That's all.
That requires a different action.
Yeah, I was just curious.
You selling one of them?
Sorry?
You selling one of them?
Yes.
Which one? I know someone's over our house. You selling the house or the business? He doesn't want to live in a neighborhood in a subdivision, so he might need it.
I'm not going anyplace. Okay.
No, I actually know somebody who's looking for a house and he wants some land around it, so if you're gonna sell the residential, let me know, I'll pass it along.
If they're well with the money, right?
any other matters, any matters of discussion? And, Genevieve, you already know all the details of that community dinner. I was gonna say repeat that for you. but
The
you got it.
20th, 6 till 8, canned food for the food pantry. Meetings tomorrow, 6 o'clock here, or 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock here. You want to participate in helping, and I think that's about it.
Thank you. Public comment?
What's that, sir?
They always need lots of cooks.
Oh,
Yeah.
Usually, pretty much Mary James does like 80% of the cooking,
Yeah.
and everybody helps out when they can, so anybody that can help Mary would be great.
Some people go to their house, they'll peel potatoes.
that's big.
She's got turkey
She
sandwich
doesn't like
all
my
over the community.
potatoes.
Nobody.
Usually the freezer, the refrigerator in the fire department the week before gets filled with turkeys and they get distributed to whoever's gonna volunteer.
Any public
So-
comments on non-agenda items? Planner, any last?
I do have two items. First of all, just for your information, it came to me from the building department that there were some concerns about the animal ordinance. And the reason they brought it to my attention was there was a discrepancy between the zoning of what we say of how many animals or how many dogs can be at someone's house and then what is in the ordinance. So I don't have copies of this, but we did put together a recommendation of recommended changes to the ordinance to bring them both into compliance. And then secondly, at the request of the building department and the president, we took a look at the land division and combination ordinance. This is basically the piece of document that just got George's piece
Right.
approved. And what we have here is a draft proposed ordinance that combines both of them. So again, this is something for village council and really the attorney to take a look at, but I'm giving you guys all a copy because this is something that we had to take an action on. So these are proposed changes. This kind of basically describes the whole process, puts definitions on things.
Can I get some more? sir?
Yeah, there's additional ones here. So not an action item for us, but potentially an action item for village council. Copy of all of the letter. Yeah, I got a bunch of them. That's for George's.
Oh, here's your-
Okay.
Here you have one for your record.
And that's all that I have.
Alrighty. Any more comments, any concerns? Hearing none, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
support,
Second.
all in favor?
9:10.
Good night.
8:10.
Oh, 8:10.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff, so that's.